Welcome back to Operations Utopia. I'm Matt Neal. Today I'm sitting down with Balasubramanian. Bala is one of the sub-team leads and one of the lead authors on the RIM reference model, the DIA RIM reference model. And he's been, like me, studying this strange world of regulatory information management for more than 2 decades. We had a broad-ranging discussion about this issue and some of the things we've seen and some of the things he's done, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. I certainly did. And now, here's Bala. I wanted to talk to you today, Bala, about how long you've been working on the RIM reference model and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can start off perhaps maybe some background, right? Something that would help as well. The reason I got kind of attracted is based on some of my own experience, having worked in big pharma before. I remember way back in 2004, 2005, part of big pharma, and it was challenging to get what I call 7 pieces of information: the generic name, trade name, dosage form, strength, which country was it filed, what is the status of the filing, is it approved, marketed, whatever, and when was it approved? Like 7 pieces of information, right?
Yeah.
It was such a nightmare getting that together, right? Across the world, because it was a global company, but not necessarily global in its thinking and operations. Each of the affiliates had their own way of tracking it, and the headquarters didn't necessarily get all that information together, in spite of having so-called registration tracking systems, right?
Right.
And that actually, and most of the information that was tracked were things that were in free text form, right? And so there was no real control vocabulary. It was not easy to find, especially if there were any commitments on a particular approval. In fact, we started this global project, and I was one of the guys who was going around the globe really to get that data. It was kind of one of those exercises where we had to go back and look at all the records in each of the countries and all that. It was, at that time, I made a comment to the leadership saying, hey, this is humanly impossible, because it's not a scalable thing where you can go and kind of land in each country and kind of go through this exercise. We could do a pilot for 5 or 6 countries, but that'll show you it's not possible to do. Go back and look at it. And I think since then things have changed a lot. The whole discipline of RIM has come about in the last 15, 20 years, I believe, and things may be in better shape. But I do not believe data is in pristine shape even today, even with systems. And because ultimately, I think the discipline of data management is a little bit behind, at least in the regulatory functional areas. It has changed a lot, of course, over the years. But I always say, hey, look at your own neighbor, Clinical. Clinical does a great job of collecting data. They have to have pristine data, because everything depends on that, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, regulatory always has this afterthought mentality. Hey, okay, I got approvals. Let me enter this thing, a week later or whatever, right? The problem is not when you want to answer the question, where was it approved, when was it approved? The problem becomes more dramatic when you have a product recall and you have to go back and see which countries have this product approved, because that is more of a compliance issue, which if you do not act on it, soon enough, you're in trouble. If you don't know where it's approved, I mean, that's just a simplistic example, but I'm just telling you how data is always treated as somewhat of a secondary nature in regulatory, right? With that background, in one of the DIA conferences, I believe in 2015 or something, there was this conversation about starting a working group for RIM, and I got interested in kind of joining that, and we started. I think there was an initial effort to collect what are called RIM data elements, but soon it became more of a exercise around what is RIM, first of all. Okay, let's go back and define RIM, right? What's the scope of RIM? And I believe Sheila Mahoney was one of the leads on that, and Peter Tobik and others. And when that started, They did some work around this white paper, the consensus white paper early on, but they stopped doing the work on the RIM data elements because it was too daunting at that time to even understand the scope of RIM, right?
Yeah.
Forget about what it means from a data perspective. So when they started doing that, I kind of joined that group in 2018, and there was basically a point in time where two working groups started. One was the white paper working group, the other was the RIM reference model. So we then said, okay, let's look at the data elements from a common data approach, right? Look at the regulatory discipline, all the functions, all the processes, what data is required to be part of that, and let's create a data model around that. So we started the RIM. At that time, we didn't call it RIM reference model 1.0, but it became 1.0, which was released in 2022-23 timeframe. But it was a very comprehensive Excel workbook, which was basically had multiple columns. You could pick a process, let's say registration process for a new drug application. And then when you filter the columns, then it'll give you what are the data elements that are required for filing a new drug application. Or similarly, INDs, things like that. It was a very comprehensive Excel workbook with one tab, which had all these filters. And over a period of time, even that became unusable even for people who were working on it, like us, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot keep filtering stuff to understand what the data model is. So we pivoted in 2022-23, saying that we have to really create a actual data model, which is conceptual in nature.
Mm-hmm.
We created an ER diagram of all the, started working on creating all the different what I call objects and relationships from a conceptual point of view. Okay, what are all the product objects? What are the registration objects? What are the application objects? What are the package related objects? And what are the commitment related? So we kind of created this higher level object relationship kind of an approach, and we started creating an Excel workbook by actually cataloging each of the objects on a tab, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a product family has a tab, product has a tab, product details has a tab, label has a tab, registration or license information has a tab. So we created these multiple tabs for each of the objects. So we went from a single Excel workbook, which had everything in one Excel, to multiple tabs in an Excel, which kind of defined each of the objects separately.
Yeah.
What are the attributes? What are the attribute formats? The definitions for each of those attributes, and what are the controlled vocabulary if it's required, or if it's sourced from some other place, things like that. So it became more like a data model in that sense. We defined common terminology which kind of handle or rather address all these process related questions. Okay, for example, when you're filing for a new or rather when you're starting a new product, and regulatory strategy around that, there's this whole activity about creating an objective or a project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go through this, we are filing in these markets, this is the plan for the IND, this is the plan for all the planning activities are also tracked, right? So we created this more comprehensive but with standard terminology so that the industry can really use that in a platform, rather platform agnostic way, right, or technical agnostic way. So it is a set of definitions which are commonly understood based on the regulatory activity that's in process, right? It's a registration, or it's an application that's filed, it's approved. What are the commitments? What are the package details? What are the labeling aspects that are relevant, and so on. And at the same time, we also didn't want to create a model which is quite different from what people are already working on, right? In the sense IDMP was coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
We kind of leveraged some of the IDMP definitions from a product perspective. We used some FHIR, standard terminology as well. So we kind of blended those things because we also didn't want to create a major model which is not acceptable or doesn't fit into the existing framework of things, right?
So
I hope I answered your question on that.
Yeah.
kind of a roundabout way. Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting to me, and probably curious to you as well, is, what are the behavioral aspects of people in these roles that make it so difficult to see the logic of having this standard model in some way, shape, or form? I guess what I mean is it's odd that they need to be convinced to keep long-term memory about product information over time, because the timescales are always so long. For a product, minimum 10 to 12 years, the product is moving through these life cycles. And for some reason, it seems like the default move is to kind of store it personally, locally, in a way that only makes sense to you.
For them, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's really interesting, and there's not a lot of other. Knowledge management was trying to be a thing for years there. People just didn't understand it, couldn't catch on. But it's the same idea. Is like we have to understand this over time.
Exactly.
And you have to understand it from the point of view of the company's product. Full stop. No matter who's managing it, every aspect of it has to be maintained and available to you in real time. So, like, I think back to those days when nothing really existed, and then RIM systems started to come online, and it was, and still is, very difficult to get people to put information into them. And I struggle with why that is, and it's, the answer isn't necessarily software or logic. It's something else that I can't put my finger on.
Yeah, so I had this morning, I was part of the RSIDM, as part of the RSIDM committee planning for next year. I made some comments. I'm sure it kind of, gelled with some people and maybe not with others. But anyway, so going back to, so you're right, product information is a long-term horizon, right? So it's not a snapshot in time. IDMP is, for example, a snapshot in time, like when you're filing and things like that. But product information has to be maintained throughout the life of the product. It's not just for regulatory purpose. It's for everybody else is using it, right? Mm-hmm. So I always say, hey, you as regulatory, look at what I call the circle of affinity, right? Your product registration information is required by safety folks, PV folks, right? Because they do filings based on international birth date, when was it approved, and things like that. You have to file all these safety reports, later on, right?
Yeah.
And then manufacturing depends on it. Labeling depends on it. I mean, everybody else has got some portion that is kind of important for them, right, of the regulatory information. Mm-hmm. So, in a sense, you become the center of that, right? So that has to be that has to be really put into people's heads. I don't think enough was done around the responsibility of regulatory to keeping that data pristine, right? And that's one thing. Secondly, data citizenship, what I call data citizenship, right? All of us in regulatory have to be trained saying that, hey, data is of utmost importance. It is not a secondary thing. It is part of a job. Almost treat data as equivalent to money. Like if you look at financial institutions or banking institutions, I've never, in the 40 years I've lived in America, I've never got a bank statement that's been wrong, right? I mean, they have to have really control. And the same with, I talk to a lot of my friends who are in the financial industry. Reconciling trades at the end of the day is a big thing for them, right?
Yeah.
You have to have dollars and cents matched. So, and they're also dealing with systems, right?
Right.
And that's because the discipline is there, collecting data, real time, reconciling, and all that. In regulatory, what happens? Oh, we filed this last week. Let me enter the data today. That's a week later. By then, if somebody is looking for, okay, did we file in this country? Yes or no? Now the people are scrambling. Making calls or sending emails. That information has to be. There has to be a way to document and get that right away, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be in the discipline. And to your point, it's not a systems issue. It's a discipline issue, right?
Yeah.
I'm responsible for this product in this country. I filed this drug. As soon as you do it, put the dates in.
Yeah. Yeah. I liken it to when we talk to people, it's kind of like, and this is, kind of a understanding that I've figured out in talking to people over the years, trying to figure out how to get them to use the system and make them realize that it's actually helping them, right? So
Correct.
that part is the hurdle to get over, but also from a senior leadership standpoint, kind of talking to regulatory professionals, whether it's the global regulatory lead or the regional regulatory leads, and just be like, you are currently the steward of this product. You're responsible for this product on behalf of the company. Part of that is keeping the records up to date, because once it's not even a scale issue, really. Like, you can see the problem once a company scales to, less than, to go from like one product and a couple hundred people to thousands of people and hundreds of products.
Correct.
Obviously, the way that we track things has to scale with it.
Scale up.
But at an individual level, it's still that individual's responsibility. Like, you get handed the keys, it's like a relay race, right? Like,
like a baton.
Yeah, the baton has to get passed because it's a 10 to 12 year horizon. So it's like that the ownership of everything related to that product has to fall on that person responsibly. And then the other half of the coin are the systems that are keeping that record. And I think I know the answer to this up until very recently has been those systems aren't that user friendly for those users, even if from our perspective, from a data standpoint, it's not the most complex data model in the world. Like, it's still, people aren't used to operating that way, they think. But when you ask them how they keep track of it without the system, they usually have a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So they do think in data, they just don't realize it because it doesn't feel as heavy, right? So I think we did ourselves a disservice in bringing RIM systems into play back 20 years ago, whenever they first started to come online, to make them seem like untouchable and too difficult, and you're not allowed to mess with it, as opposed to a spreadsheet where they can make anything they want so they feel comfortable. Somewhere in that gap is where we lost the thread of like, this isn't actually that hard. It's just Excel that everybody can see all at once, I think that's been a really interesting ride. And now, as you said, technology isn't the problem. And now when we can make it really, really simple by using AI to interrogate the data and give them that like chatting with their data kind of idea, we realize the data is not in the right format still.
It is not. It's not. And that's why you need a standardized, I wouldn't call, the reference model is not a standard, just to be clear, right? It's more what I call, I wouldn't even call it taxonomy. It is kind of a taxonomy. It's a common terminology kind of approach. Having said that, that's the point, right? You need to have a standard definition for everything, and you need to have standard control terms as much as possible, of course, because there was a time when we had free text fields everywhere. Indication, cancer of the breast cancer. I mean, how many combinations can you get out of that, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was very difficult to do analysis on the data with that kind of approach.
Abbreviations and people's initials and
exactly.
Yeah.
And we are much better now. But I think it's a fundamental. I know people may not like it, but in regulatory, I think data has always been treated as an afterthought. I think. There was a time when data was important. Then we went to a very document-centric world.
Yeah.
And documents became important for regulatory because that was the face of the company and the product to the regulators. And in that process, we kind of dropped the importance of data. And we are now trying to get back to data. It's almost like a back to the future kind of a thing, right? It's full circle. We've come full circle, but that discipline is not there. And I always say, hey, talk to your clinical folks. They have to have data of high quality. And similarly, we need to have a data discipline which is kind of embedded right from the time you hire. You need to kind of drill that into your discipline. And another challenge I see is, for some reason, especially in R&D, people are hesitant to put performance objectives around data, quality, right?
Yeah.
It has to be part of your as your role as a regulatory person in this country or whatever it may be. You need to have data as one of your performance objectives and measures, which are really tracked, and you either get incentivized or penalized based on that.
And it's going to feel like a burden, but it's like, no, we're trying to help you. You know this information already. It's almost like, regulatory has been getting away with not having this discipline for a long time. And now that AI is here and organizations are looking to maximize their data, it's really, this convergence is really interesting to me right now because there's a lot of energy around it. But I think that longtime regulatory folks in general haven't had anything tailored to them to make the case where they really felt like they were the users. It always felt like they were put upon. The data people are coming, the ops people are making them do things. They're making them enter stuff in data, and you look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, we made these fields required because it's important. And they're like, yeah, well, I can't answer that because it's required. It takes me too long. And then it's just like, hold on. Look at this big picture long term, and you really like what might take you a few extra minutes right now will help you a year from now when you forget this happened.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the weird memory, institutional memory part that kind of gets missed in this capability. And it's kind of fun to watch from our perspective now, I feel like now there's finally enough of a push that the investments are there in this technology. And then when you come back to your leadership, you're like, yeah, we're not getting anything out of this because we have to do a whole data remediation project for the next year to make it work,
Yeah, so that's another interesting point, right? So there was a time when we said, okay, we have old systems, we cannot capture everything. RIM is more than registration tracking, your product information labeling, commitments, all that, right? Now it's become a more of this so-called 19 functional areas. If you look at Steve Gains's stuff, right? He's got things that are related, but that has kind of increased the scope of data management, right? On the one hand, you need it. On the other hand, like how much are you asking people to do, right?
Right.
But interestingly, I remember way back when I was in corporate, life sciences, we had this registration tracking system which had 33 required attributes in one screen or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm,
So without entering 33 attributes, you couldn't get out of it, right?
Yeah.
But not all of them are available at that point in time. So it was not life cycle based, right?
Right.
Where you are in the life cycle of the product, right? So on the one hand, I think things have changed now. We do that. Okay, in the beginning, when you're starting a project, you just create this minimum fields. Then as things progress, you keep adding that. But you have to kind of enforce that, right?
Yeah.
From a technical point of view, you need to enforce that. The other challenge which I used to see was control lists were not used or control vocabularies were not used much, which created its own problem. Then you have cascading lists. I mean, till recently, many systems did not have cascading. If you pick this attribute with this value, the next list has to be controlled based on that, right? Cascading list. All that is common knowledge, but we didn't have systems doing that, right?
Yeah.
So progressively, it makes it easy for people to pick and choose, kind of a thing, right? So all this, technically, we've addressed those problems. And to your point, the RIM data model is only 56 plus objects, right? It's not a big thing. I mean, Salesforce has got so many thousands of objects, but the number of relationships are important, and the progressive disclosure or progressive collection of information is important.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all that, we don't have a data discipline. To your point, it's an afterthought. We're always doing data remediation, and why is that? Because that discipline is not there. Because we said, okay, systems are not good, so we went and bought these humongous systems, spent a lot of money, and as long as the program is running, the transformation program is running, people are all excited.
Yeah.
They have data ops teams entering data, collecting data from different, whether it's a decentralized model or a centralized model, whatever it is. Over a period of time, maybe 3 to 4 years after the whole transformation initiative has been launched, it happens all the time. What happens is reorgs happen.
Yep.
People get disbanded. They move on. People who have declared success have moved on. The others who are holding the bag, they have fewer resources. They don't have enough resources. And then data goes back to where it was. And then you start remediation again.
Well, I wonder, too, how much we've shot ourselves in the foot. You brought up a good point there. Like, these projects go on forever. I mean, you would get like a 3-year project, multi-million dollars to fix the data.
Right.
And to your point, people change. Like, I think if we could actually, and this is what I'm trying to do in my spot, is like put it in place and get it up and running so people can actually see what you're talking about as quickly as possible. Because what inspectors care about is, did you capture all the information? Do you have it under control? Can you show me the breadcrumb trail? How did we get here? The sooner we have the system doing that for us, the more inspection proof we are, right? So like we'll spend years building a system and training on a system and never get the system actually working. Instead of get it up and running, get it, as good as we can, and we'll iterate along the way, make it better along the way, figure out, oh, this should probably be a required field. Okay, cool. And instead, it's like people never got there to see what good looks like. So I had a really unique experience in a very small startup where we had complete control, complete autonomy to train a very small amount of people on how to do this. So you're in a very small confined space. You're like, okay, the 3 of you have to pay attention to me here, and we'll show you. We'll hold your hand. We'll show you how to do it. You come out the other side with evangelists who are just like, oh my God, I didn't know this could be so easy. Like literally, you're one click away from a chronology report at your fingertips at all times, and you know that it's accurate. Like minds explode, right? Because it's this is what you get. This is the result of good data usage and citizenship, right? But you have to show them. They don't see it. And I think our operations for years have seen it and couldn't communicate it.
And and I think to your point, this evangelism, so-called evangelism, right, it has to be embedded, right? In the sense, it's not a program level thing, right? Okay, you identify champions, and just as long as the program is alive, you just do it.
They have to feel it.
Exactly. Not just that, the operations piece is important. Yeah. It's not just launching a tool or system and 3 years later you kind of just go away, right?
Yeah.
The operational folks have to have evangelism embedded in their process. You need to have these people who are enthusiastic and who spread the word, who kind of do the hand-holding, whatever is required. So, because that is the change management in a very implicit way, right? Not an explicit way, right? Yeah. So you need to have those people champions throughout. It's not just a one-time, activity, right?
Yeah, it's very fascinating to see the switch flip too. Because like the biggest detractors in a very short period of time are like, you know what? I don't know how I lived without this. Like, yes. I don't know why I wanted to keep 7 different Excel sheets on my desktop and reference my emails in an inspection. This is so much easier. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the reasons why I even started this podcast is like, I got to figure out, we collectively owe it to all the hard work over the last 30 years in figuring this stuff out to help people understand more effectively the impact that this type of stuff can have on the day-to-day, but also on I think the obligation to have good real-time information available for the organization. Like you can't plan very effectively if you don't know what's happening. You can't respond effectively to questions from shareholders or potential partners or anything in the business layer. Like, I don't think we could have expected that our senior leadership would assume that at their fingertips was the answers to these questions. And if they did, they never saw, if a VP sticks their head out the door and says, hey, I need to know where our products are marketed worldwide. I have a meeting tomorrow, and they shut their door. 40 people are going to run away and scramble and try and figure it out to build it into a slide deck for him or her, right? So ideally, you say that is always available to you. It's here. It's one click away on this dashboard that you can see, right? And you can trust that data. And it takes a charismatic leader to, I think, be on the hook for you to say, I'm going to enforce that. I need that. I need to know that it's real time. Therefore, we have to push it down into the organization to install that discipline. And that is a tough one everywhere.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, that's a great point. So that also comes from the executive leadership kind of thing, right? See, that's another thing. When reorgs happen, those leaders move away, right? Then you get new leaders, but those new leaders may not have the same level of priority.
Yeah.
And what do you call affinity to this stuff, right? So you need to have something that's kind of systemic, not just.
Yeah, I want it to be ubiquitous. Like I look at it as like everybody should have this standard. Like the expectation should be this is always correct, and you hear it now. This is where it's really starting to come out. Is in inspections itself, because the health authorities have matured, and they know that the capabilities of these systems should allow them to have perfect records. So they come in asking questions about those records. And they're like, well, can't you just pull this up in your TMF system? Can't you just pull this up in your RIM system? You know, they know it's possible, which is a wild flip, right? For them to have higher expectations. I mean, you used to know like a document request, they'd give you a couple days. Now it's like, you should have that now, but I'll give you an hour.
Because they've reduced, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, there was a time when we couldn't answer those 7, data element questions I mentioned, right? What products are registered where and when are they approved? But now the questions are a lot more complex. Okay, I have this change control request for a product from manufacturing. Now let me look at all the registrations that are impacted by that. Mm-hmm. That's a bigger problem, and those decisions have to be made faster now than before, right? Because the whole market is changing, because now you have got reach in multiple markets simultaneously. It's not like, we registered here 5 years ago, we registered there, 2 years ago. Yeah. Now with global simultaneous submissions, it has reached multiple markets all at once. Mm-hmm. Now if there's a change control request, now you have to go back and look at all the other places where you had submissions, and then you have to kind of go through the impact analysis of that, right? So the situation is more complex now, and more so you need to have good data,
I'm trying to embrace, Bala, that operations is the only, it seems like operations is the only organizations that actually have this view.
Correct.
Typically in an organization. So it's incumbent on us to explain it more effectively.
Correct.
And I think that's a challenge. You might get occasionally the leader who already understands it, or, was lucky enough to be somewhere where they had good data outputs and things like that, and they have expectations. But I think the large majority are not in that space.
In ways, and not just that. I mean, to your point, maybe there is also regulatory strategists have to treat the ops folks as their equals, right? Not as somebody who's doing ops jobs, right? That's another thing.
Well, I'll tell you, I think you do this too, but I've been in a couple, there's a few institutions that have regulatory programs, master's programs and things like that. So USC, Cal Poly's starting one up. And I've had the privilege of speaking at those to the class, doing like a guest lecture.
Correct.
So 1 45-minute to an hour lecture across a 2-year master's program is all they get in systems operations and data and information management. And you're on one hand, you're like, well, I guess I want them to concentrate on the science and the regulatory, but also without this, their job's going to be really difficult. And, the good thing is that the kids today have high expectation for what's available. So that's good.
My daughter, just to that point, my daughter's been out of the college for almost 6 years now after master's and all that. And she says, Dad, why are of course she's in clinical operations and all that. our systems are old because these kids are used to information at their fingertips. Now,
Yeah.
things are coming late. Somebody has to enter data somewhere else, waiting for the. Why are we? I mean, they see it because
Yeah.
they are trained with information on their fingertips.
Digital native.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
we grew up on the paper, hated it so much we couldn't get away from it. So we built all this stuff, and everybody's still kind of behind us. It's
exactly. I mean, and that's the. I mean, yeah, but the need for information is a lot more. Executives have to be on top of it. I mean, they have to be what I call tech savvy to a large extent because, and in fact, a lot of them, and we all have to be AI savvy next, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be left behind, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know somebody who's actually created a MS Teams kind of an interface to the RIM system where they can ask natural language queries. Okay, show me all the products. Show me these products where they're approved in which countries and when.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dream. Is you have to do that, but for that to work,
you need the back end to be
the back end has to be right.
Exactly, but again, data discipline is very important. I think we have to learn from other areas. I mean, real time. I mean, look at airplanes. Of course, RIM is not an airplane and a real time control system, but data is treated really, as an important, keystone thing, right? And as long as data is not treated equivalent to money, we'll have this situation in regulatory.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Money does make people pay attention. If you could put a dollar amount on the lost
opportunity
and the time it takes people to pull together stories like this.
Yeah.
Like my example of the VP sticking their head out the door. I watched that happen at companies that I worked at, so I know that it's real. Like you'd get an urgent request. Hey, the VP needs blah, blah, blah. An email goes to 20 people and then they go round and round. Like, I think this is it. Oh, where's that spreadsheet from? And like, I think it's right. And then you hand it over like hand shaking. Like, here's the slides we think is right. And it's wild.
And I think there was also this argument, the regional affiliates have their own spreadsheets.
Right.
We have to make things easy for them because in order to have a line item in a global system, they have other things that they have to track internally, and they still go back to their Excel, right? I mean, we had all these arguments before, but I think systems allow you to create these custom lists of your own in order to have a top line item, right? Which we can perhaps, again, all this goes back to people being system literate and savvy, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, that pillar that we put these systems up on when they first came in made them seem so untouchable. And to your point, you can configure yourself into oblivion and get in trouble if you over configure. But if you can stay on a standard template, again, if you have something like the RIM reference model and you can build extra around that doesn't impact the core data, like you're saying, there's no limit to the amount of metadata you can tag things with. The whole point is to be able to find it later as best you can. So holding the system dear and not being able to change it often also locks people up in this cycle. So I want to kind of bring it in for a landing here, and I wonder, because you've been around this for so long and you work so hard on these endeavors, and what do you think is your prediction for the future in this space, based on the current convergence of technology capabilities, and the will maybe to adopt modern capabilities? What do you think what's your prediction? What is the next, say short term 2 to 3 year window look like, and then beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, from the reference model point of view, or generally from the industry?
Just generally, I think the reference model is a key indicator of things to come in terms of the discipline here. Yeah,
I mean, I see in general the rise of data-driven submissions, right, which is going to drive data centricity within all of our disciplines, and more so in regulatory. And if the agencies are asking for data-oriented submissions or data-centric submissions, the whole industry is changing their mindset. Okay, let's look at data for structured data for labeling, structured data for CMC, for clinical report. So that data mindset is coming. But having said that, there are lots of standards that are out there, a lot of requirements, and it'll take some time for people to get a handle around the various regulatory requirements that are coming up from ICH and from FDA and others, right? So, which is going to be a challenge because I think everybody's faced with obviously fewer resources and lots of change happening at the same time. But the fact that IDMP is there, and IDMP is beyond compliance requirement. I think it's going to change, or it has already changed the mindset that everybody needs to have an MDM, right?
Right.
Which we never had in pharma in general, at least on the R&D side.
Yeah.
On the commercial side, we had because people had to release products and manage revenues and all that stuff. And but on the R&D side, I think MDM is becoming important, and IDMP is kind of driving that. And in order to satisfy that, RIM systems have to drive that, right? And because there's the so-called regulatory product master kind of concept, right? Regulatory has to feed some part of the master data management kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So all that is kind of converging. I think people are realizing. So what my prediction is, I think people are going to accept data-centric way of working more, and I believe that's going to change. But the scale is big. Too many things happening all at once. So focus is going to be split, right? And fewer people. And I think for some reason the outsourcing helps in a certain way, but outsourcing has become very transactional, right? Okay,
Yeah.
we send this data operations function to somebody else out there. In a so-called GCC, capability center. The problem is it becomes a very transactional thing. And in some cases, what I've heard is you lose the data quality and the data currency, right? The timeliness of data, entry in a quality way. It kind of gets lost in that process. So if you're doing an outsourcing, then they have to be treated, or rather, they have to treat data in the same way as you would if you were inside, right?
Yeah.
And that goes back to where you contract and have SLAs and all that stuff. Yeah.
I think I always just kind of hoped it would go the way of like TurboTax.
Yeah.
It seems like along the way, capturing the data shouldn't be as difficult as we've made it. Yeah. If you catch it timely.
Incrementally, exactly.
So partly the configuration of the systems was bad from the get-go because you'd say, to your point, like, well, we need 56 data elements eventually.
Yeah. Correct.
So in order to get the record started, you have to know all of them. Well, that doesn't work. And I think there's actually, to that point, I think there's a new feature that just came out recently that I saw where even if you have required fields, you can still get the record started. And it'll sit in a state waiting for...
In a draft state. Yeah, exactly.
And that's like now. That's happening now in 2026 that a major system is getting that kind of technology. So I agree with you. I think the one thing I hope we can push on is the time frame, because we've been hearing about FHIR and IMPD and all of these data-centric things for years, and we are currently just trying to get the eCTD 4.0 over the hump, and there's timelines out to 2030. So I wonder if things will push that timeline that we didn't expect. The emergence of AI, the emergence of platforms like Accumulus to enable the speed now. I hope that kind of pushes us to hurry up a little bit, because, eventually, it does boil down to the patient's time and the availability of medicines globally and the good data stewardship. All of that, we know from an operational technologist standpoint, is possible.
Right.
So this is behavioral.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. behavioral training, mindset, all that, right? I think all our processes should be data centric, right? That's important. Yeah, it should not be just purely task oriented, workflow based. Data has to be an integral part. I mean, the way we started the reference model was exactly that, right? When we did the version 1, we mapped out 2 key processes. One was the IND process, or the initial application, and then the NDA process, or marketing authorization. We mapped out the process and then say what data is required when. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how we started with the version 1.0, right? And soon we kind of changed that. And version 2.0 is basically about, okay, what are all the data requirements of various processes, whether it be filing for a new application,
Right.
or labeling, or defining what a product is, or having health authority interaction. So all these buckets of information got created based on that analysis.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's interesting how far we've come, but also how long
so near yet
how
so
long
far.
it's been.
Yeah.
So, all right, Bala, I really appreciate the conversation. I think the work that you've done is wonderful, and really pushed what's possible out there in a tough environment. We've been at it a while.
Thank you. My only plug is I would like more people to. The 2 vendors have looked at it. They said this is very comprehensive. In fact, their own offerings are a subset of what we have defined, which was a good feedback that we see that some of the sponsors, drug sponsors, have used it, and one of the sponsors also used it for creating their own regulatory product hub kind of a thing. But we'd like people to really look at it carefully, use it either as a starter kit for building new RIM systems if they have not done it already, or use it as a backbone for doing migrations from one system to another.
Right.
Or in an M&A situation, they want to compare, which tool to keep or which one to let go. So it's very platform or technology agnostic. So it's it's very well structured. It'll be good for us to hear back from them. Any feedback, that'll be great. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes to any of the tools or documentation you want people to check out.
Yeah.
And
we got all of them hosted on the DI website. I can send you the links. Thank you. Thanks,
right.
Matt.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you. Take care. Bye.